In the previous video, I showed you how to make the surfboard blank that I have right here. Now we're going to do the shaping in this video. We're going to need a template. So I'm going to show you first, I'm going to talk a little bit about templates. I'm going to trace out my existing board. As I mentioned, to build this board, I'm just going to be replicating an existing board. So templates, where do you get them? Well, there's a few different sources. You can go online and just grab a template that someone has already done. There's websites out there, people have created surfboard templates, and you just print them out, tape them together, and you're good to go. That's probably the easiest way to do it. Another way that I used to do is I used to use a vector drawing program like Adobe Illustrator, CorelDRAW, way back, to maybe trace out its surfboard template and then print it out into like sheets of paper, tape them together. Again, find a design that you like, that's an option. Another option is to freehand it. Just sketch out a design, a surfboard that you like, and then just see how it works. That's how you get better at building boards. I've done that as well. So I've done all three methods. What I'm going to do today, though, is I already have this board that I want to replicate. So I'm just going to trace out one half of it, take some paper, template it onto that, and then replicate it on the other side. You might say, well, why don't I just trace out this board equally on both sides? The problem with that is this board could have some variations on the one side. I might not have it lined up properly. If I do it the way with tracing out one side first and then using the paper, what ends up happening is I get an exact duplicate on both sides, so it's perfectly symmetrical. In theory, I'm going to trace out the front, and then I'm going to move the board up and trace out the tail, because I like the front and the back of this board, but this board is 4 inches shorter that I'm going to be shaping, so the blank here is 4 inches shorter than the existing board that I'm duplicating, because I want to make it a little bit shorter. So that's all that there is to it. There's nothing magical, scientific about it. I think it's more of an art. It's just fun to experiment and see how different boards ride. That's what makes it really fun and addictive. Alright, I'm going to trace this out, do out the template, start shaping the board. So that's going to be the bulk of this video. I'm going to use a nice sharp Sharpie. Just trace this out. Alright, so here's the template, or I should say the stencil, the trace. So now what I'm going to do is trace it out onto some paper so I can duplicate it exactly on the other side. In order to trace this one side of the surfboard, I'm going to cut it out first so it makes it a lot easier to mark on the paper. So I'm going to cut this out, trace it, flip it, and then trace it and then mark it on the other side. So I'm just using this is a Japanese saw, but you can use a regular hand saw. I just prefer a Japanese saw because it cuts on the backstroke on the pole. I get a little more control. When I cut this, I'm going to leave a little bit of I'm not going to cut right to the line. I want to leave a little bit of space, and then I'm going to use my little planer here, my Surfform, to remove the rest, so that way I don't accidentally cut into the blank. when you're doing this, try to keep this as close to a 90 to perpendicular to the board itself. You want this as flat as possible without like being on a weird angle or anything. So make sure that this stays as even as possible. So I flipped the board around towards the front just so I could do the back, because it's just a little easier to film to get the camera angle. I also have one of these. This is a big rasp specifically made for shaping surfboards. I got this from Green Life Surf Supply. This is called a G-rasp, and it's got all kinds of little, I'm not sure what it is, maybe carbide, and it's super sharp and it's really handy. It's got the holes that really help keep this from clogging. You can just use sandpaper as well, but I like using this because it's a little bigger, easier to hold. The Surfoam, really great tool. I've shaped complete boards with just this, but this is a little bit easier, so I'm going to just switch to this for a bit. The other alternative is get some 40 grit sandpaper and put it on a block of foam as well, and that works really well. So again, nice long even strokes all the way back and forth. Don't worry if your line doesn't match up completely. It's better to go with your eye than to go with what you see on what you've drawn on the board. The one half of the blank has been cut out with my template that I stenciled on it. Now I'm going to draw it onto a piece of paper so I can replicate it on the other side. So I'm pretty happy with it. Got nice smooth arcs. Look down, get down nice and low, look at the board, make sure that it's got nice smooth arcs, look at every angle, make sure you got lots of light. Key thing, plenty of light. If you don't have enough light, you're not going to be able to tell if you have a high spot, low spot, or if it looks wavy or uneven. When I first started making boards, I made it in my parents' basement, and I had inadequate lighting, and while the boards came out okay, they definitely weren't as good as they could be. So learn from my mistakes. Lots of lighting. Now to make my life a lot easier, I'm going to line it up, this sharp edge of the paper, the clean edge, right against the stringer, so that way when I cut this out I can just flip it and then line it up on the other side and I'd be perfectly symmetrical, in theory. So how I'm going to do this is I thought about actually just tracing this out, but that's not as clean. I'm just going to crease this paper and then I'll cut it out. And that'll give me a nice mark. So crease it. Alright, so I'm going to flip this over I also marked on it the date and the type of board because I like to keep a record. If you're going to start making a whole bunch of boards, it's really important to keep records. So we're going to take the template, flip it over, line it up with the stringer, and then trace it out. Time to get messy. Now we need to even out the blank. Now that we have the template all cut out, we need to remove the bulk of the foam that's left down to the stringer, and it gets pretty messy. So you can just use coveralls or something if you like. You don't have to wear anything at all. I like to just use a plastic bag. So I'm just going to put this, I cut a couple holes in it. It's cheap, it's quick. I can throw it out if it gets dirty or if I use it for other stuff. So all it is this. It looks silly, but it works. I don't really need arms or anything. It just keeps the bulk of the dust off me because the foam dust, especially if there's if it's real staticky, it really clings to you. It's a real pain to get off you. If I was shaping boards all day, it wouldn't make a difference because I wouldn't care, but I only get out here to shape for a little while and then I have to put it away. So anyways, I like this. I have two blocks here. These are 2x4s, pieces of wood. This has a 20 grit sandpaper on it. Super, super rough. So hopefully I can get that in focus there. This is a super, super rough sandpaper. And then I have one here that isn't quite as rough. This one's maybe like, I believe it's an 80 or 100. It's the width of the board. And what I'm able to do with this is kind of like a poor man's, I don't know, surfboard shaper. I don't know. I'll call it that. And I can use two hands and drag it to keep leveling the blank really easy. So, first step, let's level the blank. Make sure that you don't work on one side too much. Again, same thing, don't scrub in one section too much. You want nice, long, even strokes. Okay, let's get to it. So here's a close-up of this sanding block. It's a 2x4, the width of a surfboard blank typically. And the sandpaper itself is just flooring sandpaper that I got at Home Depot. And it goes on a really big sanding machine, but you can pick up this stuff maybe in other places besides that. Usually it's the rental department that you can get it. And this one is 20 grit, so it's super, super rough. And it'll make short work of any foam. It'll be really, it'll make tears in it though. So you don't want to go all the way. You want to take it most of the way, and then you'll switch over to the other one that isn't quite as rough. And I might use the Surfoam or the G-Rasp to do a little bit of it as well. So these guys here, you can switch back and forth. But again, remember as I said earlier, don't stay in one spot. Nice long even strokes on the foam. What I like to do a lot of times is hollow out the center almost down to the stringer and then work with the block to level off the two sides. I just find it's a little easier so you're not grinding at so much surface area. almost forgot to shape this part here, so before I continue on, I'm just going to shape this real quick, and then I'll continue flattening the blank. Alright, I've vacuumed this up a little bit, and as you can see here, it's getting down to the stringer. What I decided to do was I worked down the middle first, all the way down. So if I can take the camera off here, you can kind of see. Because I want to keep nice, long, even sanding strokes, I worked down the middle here, so you can see the stringer's almost there, but it's still high up here. I'm going to work down the middle section, widen it out, and then use the block and then pull, because it just makes it a little less surface area to pull on the block all at once. I have shaped the whole board doing it just by using this and then grinding away at it. It just took a while. This method here, I like alternating occasionally, just depends on how I feel and what the situation is. But in this case, I've decided to go this route. So I'm just going to, now you can see there's a gap here. You can see, let me see here, you can, there's a concave there, right here, like that. So now when I work the board, the sanding block, it'll work the two edges down until it meets this bottom section. Until the stringer, I should say. And then down here, as you can see, I've worked it all the way down, right down the middle. I gotta do a little more work, but you get the idea how to do this. So I'm gonna keep working away at this. So far I've only been at this maybe 10 minutes, so it doesn't take a lot of time, but it's just incredibly messy. I vacuumed up most of it before I started filming again, but it just makes a ton of a mess and the stuff just gets everywhere. Actually, it's not too bad now because I vacuumed up my hands and stuff. So this front part is now pretty much done. You can see that it's starting to sand down into the spot that in the middle that I planed down earlier. I'm going to do the rest, work my way through the rest of the board. Alright, I wanted to mention something really quick and super important before we start really shaping the board. We really need the blank to be level, and in order to be level, to get good results, is we need our stands to be super level. So this is a key thing. Once you get your stands, whatever type you build, make sure that you level them. Level the corners, level them back and forth. Make sure that your bubble stick is level, because if it's not, when you go to actually shape your blank, one side might be higher than the other. You're just going to get really funky results. So super, super important, level your stands. Now that I've been grinding away at this and removing a bunch, it's important to take a level and to check it. Just check it to make sure, number one, as earlier as we leveled our stands, make sure that the blank is level. And number two, you're going to look down and you're going to see if there's any weird waviness. You want this to make sure this is level, this is flat, and you're going to work your way up. Now, I only have leveled this first part. Up here, what we're going to do, as you can see, there's a bit of a gap. Now this gap is what I honed out, or I hollowed out using the Surfoam. And then I'm just going to work down the sides a bit more before I work with the large block here so I can get it nice and even. So it's a couple stage effect. So I'm going to work the sides down. I'm going to work all my way down to the end of the blank, and then I'm going to work with this, checking with my level every so often just to make sure I'm within a few degrees, make sure that the bubble isn't too off, and I'll just correct as required. You can see here that right now it's perfectly level. Even though I have it hollowed out here, my two sides are level. So in theory, once I start working away at this, it will stay level, hopefully. This here is a power planer, and a lot of pros and maybe more advanced board builders use a power planer to shape their boards. I used to use one. I just found I wasn't that good with it, and I just prefer using a hand tools to do it. And if you have a lot of foam, it's really quick. So I have a little bit of foam here to remove, but I don't really need to use it. I thought I would just break it out just to show you that you can use one. But yeah, it just planes stuff off. A lot of times I see the pros do it and they go back and forth across the stringer and then they go on an angle down along the board. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to use it to remove some of this bulk foam and do the rest by hand. But if you're adventurous and maybe after your first board you want to invest in one, it does make things faster. You just really need practice to know how to use one. So even myself, I've shaped quite a few boards. I haven't gotten that good at it. But anyways, that's an option. So I wanted to just do a little stop here and just show that the surfboard blank is getting leveled really nicely. So I got my level on it here. It's nice and level on both sides, it's even, and then the bubble there is in the center, so it's level. Looking really good, even in the middle here, even on the sides. But I want to comment on the back here, on the tail, and just a couple things real quick. First thing is the glue joint. Unfortunately, the glue joint had a little tear here where the shore foam caught. The polyurethane glue that was used to glue the two pieces of foam together is harder than the foam. So what ends up happening is the foam cuts down first and the glue remains, and if you don't have a really sharp tool or blade, it has a tendency not to cut very well. Even though I do have a new blade on this, it just had a tendency not to cut very well. I got it okay, and it helps to go with it. So I wanted you to be aware of that. I find it helps if you go against it too, once you get to that glute joint, and just helps level it down. Okay, last thing is the stringer. The stringer, when we clamped the foam together and we glued the stringer in, sometimes the polyurethane glue has a tendency to bubble out and then it gets stuck to the top of the stringer. And that's problematic because when you're shaping, again, with your sanding block or your Surfoam, it doesn't cut the glue down at the same rate as the foam. So what ends up happening is you have the foam getting cut down and then the glue remaining. So what I like doing on the stringer is I like hollowing this all out down until you see here it's hollowed out like that, and then it's nice and level. So the glue I've already removed the glue in this part, and you can see here now I'll just work on either side. I'll use my sanding block and work that down. I think we'll call this the end of the profiling shaping video. The next video will be more shaping, but it will be shaping the rails. So what I've done is I've profiled, I've cleaned up, made everything nice and flat, even. So I wanted to make a quick comment about the thickness. So here you can see the thickness of the nose. It's pretty thinned out, which is the way I like it, which is what I was going for. But I kind of knew how thick I wanted the board to be, so when I was shaping the stringers, I already kind of shaped it down to the final shape because it just makes it a little easier. Now, if you need to thin out the nose or the middle or the tail, so let's go back to the tail. So there's the tail there, and you can see it's pretty thinned out. And then along the rail here, you'll see the thickness. So it's pretty much following the stringer. But if you, for instance, want the middle to be a little thinner, so it's not as thick, you can, for the thickness, you can either remove from the deck or the bottom. It just depends on also the shape of your rocker or your stringer. Now, the way you do that is you use something called a spoke shave, or you can use a planer. So this is a spoke shave. I've had this guy for like, I don't know, 20 years maybe even. And what it has is it has a planer blade in the middle, and then two little handles or wings that you grab a hold of, and it cuts by when you pull on it. So, and then it creates shavings. Unfortunately, because I've already have my board in the profile and the thickness that I want, I don't need to do that. But this is the tool that you would use for shaping your stringer as well. So what you would do, and I'll just mimic it so you get an idea, and you get the hang of it really quickly. So you're gonna place it on your board where you wanna, say, thin down your stringer. So you're gonna put it here, and then you're gonna pull. And what it'll do, it might tear some of the foam. Don't be too concerned about that, because when you sand, you'll get out most of it. You're gonna pull on it like this. Nice, long, even strokes again. And then it'll get thinner and thinner, but the foam here, you'll have to, of course, again, use your profiling block and profile that down. So you remove your stringer first, and then you profile. And that's all you have to do. And then do that for the whole length of the board, wherever you need to make it thinner, and that's all that there is to it. If you want to reshape, say, the nose, you want a little more kick in the nose, a little bit more curve, you can work on this here. Or same thing in the tail, or if you need to thin out the middle, exactly the same thing. So that's all that there is to it. What I like about the spoke shave instead of a planer is the planer can do the bottom because it's got a convex, but on the nose you have a concave. So it's much harder to use a planer to do that unless you have a power planer and you go against it, which is, for beginners, that's not what you're going to do. So again, this can be used for both sides. So that's it, the spoke shave. This here is a caliper that I made out of plywood and a bolt and a wing nut, so I can tighten it down so I can measure the thickness of the surfboard. So all I do is I just come across, I take a measurement, I lock it, then I take a measuring tape and I just measure, and that gives me thickness. The other thing you can do is you can mark on it, like I've done here, some marks roughly of what the thicknesses are, like 3-inch, and then I have like a 2-inch mark and a 2.5-inch mark. So super useful tool. So a couple last things I want to mention before I sign off the rest of this video. I have this shaping, I don't know what you would call it, Versa Square they call it, and it's from Green Life Surf Supply. I'm not sponsored by them, but I really like their stuff, and they have reasonable shipping to Canada. Anyways, this Versa Square can be used to mark fins and a few other things, but what I like using it for is I can lay the stringer here and then it counts all the way out the width. So you can tell if you are symmetrical on both sides. So I'm looking here and I'm like at 20 3/4, and this side here I'm at 20 3/4, so it's equal. Now, if you don't have one of these, very important, use a measuring tape and measure across. So I'm at, like on this spot here, I'm like at 10 1/8, and if I measure here, I'm just doing this real quick, 10 and just about 1/8. Anyways, super important to measure, take measurements, make sure it's nice and symmetrical. If not, adjust as required. So check the whole thing over. Again, look down the length of the blank, make sure you're completely happy with it. One last look at the board, all profiled out. Oops, it's looking pretty good there. Alright, I'm going to end this video here, but before I do that, I just wanted to say I really appreciate you guys on all the great feedback I got from the previous 2 videos on making this board. I'm just trying to share what I know. I've made mistakes on this board. I'm still making mistakes, but I'm still learning. But I'm just sharing what I've learned in the last few years on board building in my backyard, quote unquote, and just, you know, hopefully help out some of you guys out there who are just starting out. And maybe some of you will be way better than I am. I'm just kind of a backyard hobbyist, just fooling around. So I'm just sharing what I know, and I really appreciate you guys with all the positive comments and the thumbs up on those videos. So if you guys just found this video in the YouTube search, consider subscribing to this channel, because I make surfboard how-to videos and all kinds of other videos as well. But my channel has quite a few videos over the years of me making boards. So anyways, the next video hopefully will be out in the next couple weeks, and then after that there might be a little bit of a hiatus because I have some stuff going on in the summer where I need to, I'm going to do a little reno on this garage as well. So anyways, thanks for watching. Until the next video, bye.